It's the 23rd of October. I'm just about to go to bed. You didn't need to know that. And it's time for the 23rd film in my 31 horrors of Mike. Now, this is another request. This one was requested definitely this time by Jackie Boy 777666. And the film that he requested was Phantasm, directed by Don Coscarelli, released in 1979. It's starring Angus Scrimm as probably one of the most iconic B-movie horror villains, the Tall Man. It's a film which I think, and I'm going to make this argument, is a lot more influential and important than some people think. First of all, the thing to remember about Phantasm is it's incredibly divisive. There are some people who think that it's a wonderful film, that it's one of the best B-movie horror films ever made. Then there are other people who think that those people are mad and that this film's an absolute mess from beginning to end. The plot of Phantasm, it starts off simple enough. And the idea is you've got two brothers, you've got Jody and Mike, and Jody is in his 20s and he's raising Mike, who's a young teenager, after the death of the rest of their families. They don't have parents. And there are the usual sort of struggles with that, and they're dealing with the loss of that. And while they're staying in a small town, a number of people start disappearing and dying. And I made a strange noise there when I inhaled. That'll be the cold again. And they believe that there is something strange going on. They think that there is someone behind these deaths. And they believe it is the Tall Man, a man who seems to work at the local funeral parlour or undertakers in a cemetery. There seems to be something very strange and sinister about him, and they start to investigate with their friend Reggie, who's like this weird ice cream vendor, pot smoker, I think, if I remember rightly. It's been a little while since I've seen this film. Nothing wrong with smoking pot. What is wrong with me? Anyway, so the three of them then, Mike, Jody and Reggie, go to the funeral parlour, and it's about how they try to investigate and see whether this Tall Man really is as sinister, or whether he is in fact just a tall man. So that's the opening of the plot. That's the beginning of it. Can't really go into it in greater detail. What you should understand about this film is that it is batshit crazy. There's no doubt about that. The plot is pretty all over the place, but I think that that's deliberate, whereas some people would argue that it's not deliberate, that it's someone who is writing a script, writing a story, making a film without really knowing what's going on themselves and just trying to come up with filler, just try to come up with isolated random things to try and complete a movie. I don't think that. I think there are a lot of really interesting ideas in this, but I think that they're more that they are sort of implied, and you don't really want to know exactly what's going on in a lot of ways, because it's that type of film. It's off the wall. And here's my assertion about Phantasm, is that it was made by Don Coscarelli, who had previously made a couple of other films, but this is the film where he really established himself. He made this one for $300,000. He made it on the cheap, and it's absolutely a B movie, but it's one that I think influenced films, most specifically of the mid 1980s. Now I don't have really any documentary evidence for this, but it seems to me, when I watch films like Night of the Creeps, and more specifically House, which is one of my favourite films from the mid 80s, and even some of Stuart Gordon's stuff, there's a visual similarity, and in some ways there's a use of sort of colour that seems similar. And Don Coscarelli is influenced by Argento in terms of, he thinks that Dario Argento is the shit, and really that's one of the things that you do get from Phantasm, is that it doesn't, well, yeah, it does have some dream logic in it. It does kind of fall apart in places, and things happen, and then things that previously happened are completely discounted because it's dream logic and everything's fine. But I certainly think that to me anyway, it feels as if this film maybe influenced, or was part of a group of films which influenced films which were made in the mid 1980s. There just seems to be a similar vibe. And if you look at films like House, you look at films like Night of the Creeps, you look at those sort of movies, they're quirky as well, they're off the wall as well, in a different way. I mean, I personally prefer House, it's one of my favourites, but Phantasm, there's not really anything else like it. It takes it takes many of the sort of things that we commonly see in B movies, with the small town, the kids or teenagers as protagonists. Something sinister going on. Is it aliens? Is it supernatural? You know, what is it? Hammy characters as well. I mean, sometimes the actors get criticised in this film. I'm not entirely convinced that it's there, but I think everything is kind of played for and got. You know, it's totally a B movie. It's totally got hammy, cheesy lines of dialogue and performances in places. Some people criticise the effects. It was made for 300 grand in 1979, and I actually think that some of the effects hold up better than some of the stuff I saw in like the early 90s. But it's a lot of fun. It does get mixed up along the way. It is pretty it is pretty difficult to categorise. Kind of goes a bit odd in places, but to me, it's, you know, people talk about Don Coscarelli did everything on this film practically. You know, I think he shot it, and he wrote it, he directed it, and then he did the 3 sequels over the next 20 years after this, and he also did Bubba Hotep, which is just a phenomenal movie. The question is, for a lot of people, is it nostalgia that makes them love this film, or is it because it genuinely does have merit? There's something about it. And this is what I have to say. I don't think I watched the first Phantasm as a kid. I think I watched it later on. In fact, I know that I watched it as an adult, just a few years ago. And I love B movies. I love these types of films. But I can recognise when something is, you know, I kind of like it. It's charming because it's crap, if you know what I mean. So bad it's good. And I don't think Phantasm is that. I think it's a film which really has a lot of merit to it. It's fun, and like I say, I think I see a lot of things from that film which I see in the mid 80s. When you watch it, I don't think it feels like a film from 1979. It feels like a film from 1985. It absolutely does to me, anyway. And it's just this. It's great fun. So go and check that out. That's Phantasm. Go and check out Bubba Hotep as well, one of Don Coscarelli's other films. And I'll be back tomorrow, I should say. Thank you very much, Jackie Boy, for asking for that film. And I'll be back tomorrow with another horror review without stuttering. I'm starting to have such big gaps in between words that I'm starting to sound like Captain Kirk. No bad thing. Good night.